Every proof-of-stake chain runs an expense line that nobody signs off on. New tokens are issued to validators. The validators keep the chain honest, and everyone holding the token pays for it through dilution. That is the security budget. And for most of the last decade, the answer to how large it should be was inherited rather than chosen, a curve written once at Genesis and left alone. This year, both Ethereum and Solana have working proposals to change it, drafted independently, aimed at the same question, and they do not answer it the same way. That divergence is the interesting part. Not which number is right, but what each design treats as the thing that ought to control the number. One of them makes issuance respond to how much of the supply is staked. The other makes issuance respond to nothing at all except the calendar. Both are on the table right now, and neither is in force.
Ethereum's answer is a draft numbered 8363, created on the 14th of July, and its title is The Whole Idea: Tapered Issuance Burn. Issuance itself is untouched. What changes is that a growing fraction of the consensus layer reward is destroyed on the way to the validator. The fraction is not linear. It is the staking ratio raised to the power 3/2, clamped at 1. And that exponent is not decoration. The existing reward curve already falls with the inverse square root of the staked amount, so an exponent of 1 would not produce a deduction that scales the way the authors want. The saturation point is fixed in the specification, 60,250,000 Ether, which is about half the current supply. Reach that, and every unit of consensus layer issuance is burned. There is no reward left for the marginal validator, and no reason for the 51st% to join. At today's ratio, which the proposal itself puts near a third, the effect is already large. Net yield falls from about 2.6% to 1.2%. That is more than half, which is why the specification carries an 18-month transition rather than a switch.
Solana's answer is procedurally the opposite. The proposal is numbered 550, it comes from Helios, and it does exactly one thing. The annual disinflation rate goes from 15% to 30%. The curve gets steeper. Nothing else in the design responds to anything. The engineering care is in the transition, and it is worth reading because the naive version of this change breaks. Solana computes the inflation rate from time elapsed since Genesis, so simply setting the taper to 30% would reshape the entire curve backwards and drop the rate discontinuously at the moment of activation. Instead, the schedule is re-anchored. The rate the old curve would have produced at the activation year is recorded, the taper is doubled, and the starting constant is recomputed so the steeper curve passes through that same point. Issuance is continuous across the boundary. The epoch that just closed settles exactly as it would have. What it buys? The terminal emissions rate arrives in roughly 2.8 years instead of 5.7, and about 18.9 million sol is removed from emissions over the next 6 years, around 2.6% less than the current schedule.
Put the two side by side, and the mechanical difference is what a control engineer would notice first. Ethereum's design is a feedback loop. Its input is the staking ratio, which is a live measurement of the thing being managed, and its output pushes back against that measurement. More stake means more burn, means less reward, means less reason to add stake. It has a target built into it at half the supply, and it does not need anyone to intervene again once it is running. Solana's design is open loop. Its input is time. It will produce the same schedule whether 10% of SOL is staked or 80%, whether validator margins are healthy or collapsing. That is not an oversight. It is the selling point. The proposal's own motivation says so in as many words. A previous attempt at a market-based mechanism became contentious, failed to reach quorum, and this one is deliberately the simplification of that idea. Predictable inflation reduction, nothing to argue about. Feedback is more precise and harder to agree on. A schedule is blunt and easy to vote for. Each chain picked the property its governance can actually carry.
So which of them is real? And the honest answer is neither, yet. Ethereum's tapered issuance burn is a draft. It has authors, a specification, a formula, and a saturation constant, and it has no activation. Solana's is further along procedurally. The status is review, with a feature gate named and a re-anchoring rule specified down to the ordering of operations, but it still requires the validator vote that its own predecessor failed to reach. What has actually changed this year is narrower than either proposal and more durable than both. The security budget stopped being a constant that came with the chain and became a parameter with a live argument attached to it. Two ecosystems that share almost no engineering culture arrived at the same question within weeks of each other, and independently concluded that what they are paying for security is a choice rather than a fact. Watch the mechanism rather than the yield. A chain that ties issuance to a measurement has committed to a target it has to defend. A chain that ties issuance to the calendar has committed only to arriving somewhere sooner. Those are different promises, and they will age differently.